Stars and Stripes show is brought to you by the U.S. Embassy.
It's Cabs FM, powered to engage your world. And of course, Kings and Queens, thank you so much. Please kindly follow the U.S. Embassy on all social media platforms and feel free to be a part of the show. Now, the U.S. Africa Leaders Summit was held on December the 13th till the 15th in Washington, D.C. And of course, it highlighted the U.S. Commitment to expanding and deepening our partnership with African countries, institutions, and of course, the people of the continent of Africa. And this is an important conversation. Engaging with Africa, it must happen. African leadership and contributions are essential to addressing today's pressing challenges and achieving shared priorities. And of course, in the building, I have the pleasure to introduce for the Meet America Policy Discussion segment, Mr. John Rash Marburg, the U.S. Embassy Political Officer. How are you, sir? And how was your holiday?
Good morning, Swift, and hello to all listening out there. I'm doing well. I had a wonderful holiday. I hope you did the same, and greetings to the other guests here in the studio today. I look forward to talking about this event with all of you.
Fantastic. Did you go home? Were you in Botswana for Christmas?
I was in Botswana for Christmas.
Oh, nice. Did you have a good time?
Yes, I did. Thank you very much.
Absolutely. Look, for somebody who's listening and asking themselves, this U.S. Africa Leaders Summit, what is it about? What is the mandate of this particular summit? And of course, what's in it for Botswana?
Absolutely. Let me start by saying this. This is the second U.S. Africa Leaders Summit.
Okay.
The first was held in 2014 and was organized by then President Obama. Mm-hmm. As some will know, our current president, Joe Biden, was the vice president at that time.
Yes.
And this was something that was a priority for him to hold another summit. So this is the second summit that was held. And Swift, as you noted, it was on December 13th through 15th, 2022.
Okay.
So just a little over a month ago in Washington, D.C. Mm-hmm. Just very quickly, the summit really reflected the strategy of the United States towards sub-Saharan Africa and the Africa Union's Agenda 2063, both of which emphasize the critical importance of the region to meet this era's defining challenges.
Mm-hmm. And look, in terms of its objectives of the summit and, the nation of Botswana, yes, we're grouped in and we're part and parcel of the continent that is Africa. But, Botswana, where do we stand and what are some of the takeaways for Botswana in particular?
Sure. Well, let me take a look at the summit objectives and what was really achieved there. Mm-hmm. And those are really just 3 points that I want. And Swift, as you noted, it was on December 13th through 15th, 2022.
Okay.
So just a little over a month ago in Washington, D.C. Mm-hmm. Just very quickly, the summit really reflected the strategy of the United States towards sub-Saharan Africa and the Africa Union's Agenda 2063, both of which emphasize the critical importance of the region to meet this era's defining challenges.
Mm-hmm. And look, in terms of its objectives of the summit and, the nation of Botswana, yes, we're grouped in and we're part and parcel of the continent that is Africa. But, Botswana, where do we stand and what are some of the takeaways for Botswana in particular?
Sure. Well, let me take a look at the summit objectives and what was really achieved there. Mm-hmm. And those are really just 3 points that I want to underscore for the listeners. The summit achieved, number one, deepened and expanded in long-term U.S.-Africa partnerships, which really will advance shared priorities. Secondly, it amplified African voices to collaboratively meet the era's defining challenges, which we can go over in a minute. And third, it leveraged the best of America, including our government, private sector, and civil society, really to uplift and empower African institutions, citizens, and nations. So specific to Botswana, all of those conversations that took place across the wide breadth of the delegation that the country sent was a very high-powered delegation led by President Masisi and the foreign minister and others, including cabinet ministers. And it really provided them with face-to-face opportunities to talk to not only U.S. Business leaders, but government entities and civil society. So I take a big takeaway from this is going to be the ongoing importance of collaboration and expanding shared interests and policy objectives for Botswana in the United States.
Absolutely. Well, if you've just joined us, welcome to the Stars and Stripes radio show, proudly brought to you by the U.S. Embassy in partnership with Gabs FM, talking shared prosperity, shared health, and of course, the shared economy. And that is what the U.S. Africa Leaders Summit represents, strengthening partnerships to meet shared priorities. And it was held on the 13th of December through till the 15th of December 2022 in Washington, D.C. Let me ask you this. Are there any milestone policy outcomes that Botswana should be aware of? Are there any policy outcomes that are going to benefit the continent as a whole? Because, whether we like it or not, Africa is the future of the world, and all the continents around the world know, including in the electrical vehicle revolution that is happening in the West. We have issues with climate change, and Africa needs to catch up. Do you have any policy outcomes that were part and parcel of this particular summit?
Yes, absolutely, Swift. And you raised some excellent points. These are all issues and agenda items that we're looking forward to in the future.
Yes.
In terms of collaborating. So before I move forward, I just want to make this point that following the summit, President Biden did call upon members of his high-level cabinet and members of the U.S. government to seek out engagements throughout Africa. And I think that's one really positive thing that we will see in the coming months in terms of U.S. engagement in Africa. I also want to just underscore that President Biden believes that our collaboration with the African leaders, not only during the U.S. Africa Leaders Summit, but in the future, will include African leaders as well as civil society, business leaders, women, youth leaders. It's all essential to tackling the shared challenges and seizing opportunities, including increasing sustainable food production, for example, strengthening healthcare systems.
Absolutely.
Combating, the COVID-19 pandemic, which is ongoing, and responding to things like escalating climate crisis, and building really a strong and inclusive global economy. I think that's what we need to focus on, and providing life-saving humanitarian assistance, as well as strengthening the core tenets of democratic principles and institutions.
Absolutely. Well, one thing that I think it's important to outline is the motive of the United States around the motive to host the summit. Why was it beneficial for the U.S. to host such a summit, bringing all or most of African countries together, heads of states, to discuss some of these global issues?
Sure. I mean, we are committed as the United States to expanding and modernizing partnerships in Africa, working together to find innovative solutions to new and long-standing challenges, and harnessing new research and technologies. And this will include investing long-term in Africa. We all believe that a focus on African nations and people is beneficial not only to the United States but to all of those countries. And the continent, SWIFT, as we know, is really a dynamic set of economies with populations, and they provide the foundation for a bright future. And this includes with the United States and trade opportunities and relationships that we forge moving forward.
Absolutely. And if you've just joined us, welcome to the show. And I'm just having a conversation with Mr. John Rash Marburg, U.S. Embassy Political Officer, on the Meet America Policy discussion, of course, here on the Stars and Stripes radio show. Listen, a colleague of mine had mentioned this, and I didn't believe her. There were rumors that, Botswana possibly could be the next host of the U.S. Africa Business Summit. She did mention it, and I never saw it coming. I was like, I don't know about that. Can you care to explain? Is there a conversation being had about us being the next host?
Yes, Swift. That has been confirmed. It's going to take place in June.
Okay.
A lot of the details are going to be worked out in the next 30 to 45 days.
Okay.
But the government has announced that they will be hosting that. The event will provide a great opportunity for hundreds of business leaders to come into Botswana.
Absolutely.
And for the government of Botswana and all the businesses here to strengthen ties and look for partnerships and trade opportunities.
Wow.
And I will say this really reflects as well back on the U.S.-Africa Leader Summit, because this came out of the summit. And, from the United States perspective, we really look forward to advancing these shared interests, not only that came out of the summit, but that now we'll work on moving forward and really to take a further step to build the 21st century U.S.-Africa partnerships that expand and deepen our long-standing engagements.
Well, June is definitely the month to be, and that is fantastic news. Let me tell you something. The Biden-Harris administration plans to invest at least $55 billion in Africa over the next 3 years, working closely with Congress, and they're dedicated to following through on these commitments and are establishing a new special presidential representative for U.S.-Africa Leaders Summit implementation to coordinate these efforts. President Biden announced his intent to name for this role Ambassador Johnny Carson, former Assistant Secretary of State for African Affairs and Ambassador to Kenya, Uganda, and Zimbabwe. And of course, this is a great step in the right direction. June, we are, I think it's safe to say, we're the first African country to host the U.S.-Africa Summit. Is that safe to say?
You mean the June event? The
June event.
There have been a couple other countries that have hosted it. Mozambique hosted in the past, and Morocco also.
Okay, so we're the third.
However, in the Southern Cone, aside from Mozambique,
we'll take that.
Will be the next one.
That's fair enough. Thank you. Thank you so much for taking the time to, obviously educate us around the importance of understanding the bilateral relationship between the Republic of Botswana and the U.S. government. Definitely shared priorities, shared prosperity, and it's important components. I always say that as long as you're a member of the global citizenry, you should be part and parcel of understanding our bilateral relationship between the U.S. government and, of course, the BW government. Let me afford you this opportunity to share your parting statement.
Thank you very much. It's been a pleasure to be here today, and I enjoy talking about these policy issues and priorities between our two countries. It's extremely important that we have a strong collaboration, not only on the political side, but also on the economic side. So it's a wonderful step, and I look forward to continuing that in these discussions and seeing how this meetings take place and play out here in June. It's going to be very exciting and a very busy time in the city.
Absolutely. Well, Kings and Queens, welcome to the Stars and Stripe Radio Show, proudly brought to you by the U.S. Embassy in partnership with Gabs FM. Your time across the nation is 11:20, and of course, in the building we have Argus Online, and we've got another veteran business editor from the Mere. Look out for that conversation coming your way. Do not change that dial. Kings and Queens, good morning.
All the hits, all the time. Gabs FM.
It's Gabs FM, power to engage your worlds. Let me start this again. I was thrown off. But it's Gabs FM, power to engage your world. And welcome back to the Stars and Stripes Radio Show, proudly brought to you by the U.S. Embassy in partnership with Gabs FM. Kings and Queens, we're going to continue conversation. And of course, we're going to head into the next segment and speak to some veteran journalists who were part and parcel of the U.S., the Africa-U.S. Summit. And of course, in the building, I'm speaking to Rembongeni Nguni, a business editor at the Mere. Say, how are you?
I'm fine, Swift. How are you? And good morning to your listeners as well.
It's nice to put a face to the name. Now I just know the name. It's my first time meeting you.
Oh, yeah. No, it's my first time meeting you as well.
Fantastic. Otherwise, how was your Christmas season?
It was good. It was relaxing, restful. Glad to be back on the job.
Well, welcome to the show. Look, you were part and parcel of the summit. You went out there, if I'm not mistaken, you were in D.C. In last quarter last year. Yeah. Walk us through your trip, the journey, and obviously I'm asking this question from the point of view being a journalist. What was it like?
Well, I think besides being obviously a long trip, the highlight of it is the fact that it's a career milestone for any journalist.
Absolutely.
You've been placed in a room with plus 40 heads of state from Africa.
Wow.
As well as senior U.S. government officials, Congress people. And on one of the days, we also had President Biden, who came through there to address the summit. So it's the highest profile meeting that you could ever hope for in terms of, especially with the issues that were on the table and the outcomes that were eventually made from there.
And from your perspective, I mean, look, best practices, the way the media carries themselves out there, and of course that whole experience, bringing it home. What was the contrast that you noticed between the two?
Well, I think in terms of what we did have a discussion about when we were out there as the media who had come from Botswana was just how organized they were, how the Americans and their different government and non-government entities put this conference together. And then the way that they'll set it up to ensure that it's not just the media spectacle. It was really about governments to governments engaging, business to business engaging, and then the media will have this opportunity to engage with whether it's private business people or whether it's governments, but then you do that on the side. You do that as they call them side meetings.
Wow.
And there were literally, like, each and every single day, there were like so many side events that were taking place outside of the main conference, right across the themes from climate change to energy to youth and that kind of thing. So putting all that together in just that space of time, you could just tell that it was an enormous undertaking, and it was pulled off quite successfully.
And it goes to show the importance of the role of media in a healthy democracy as the fourth, estate of government. It's important for media in terms of accountability and contributing to a healthy democracy. It's important to have, veterans such as yourself in those buildings, getting to understand best practices, getting to understand the relationship and how to talk to power. I mean, that's one thing that I think we tend to underestimate is that, your role is to talk to power, to keep power accountable. So that's definitely so. Is there any more takeaways that you experienced from this particular summit?
Yeah, there were a whole lot. I mean, we at Michi, we report a lot on microeconomy. We report a lot on microeconomy. We get right down into it, get into businesses, to SMEs and trends in the economy.
Absolutely.
So that summit was a bonanza for us because we were able to, all the things that we are tracking each and every single day were what was being discussed, and it is not only the thought leaders but the policy makers and decision makers who were actually in the room. So the one thing that was a highlight for me was the AGOA ministerial.
Okay.
AGOA is AGOA is elapsing. The trade deal AGOA is elapsing in 2025.
Okay.
And at the summit, it turned out that they've agreed, the ministers met with the Congress people and representatives of government, and they agreed that they're going to renew it before December.
Wow.
So that information was shared with us. We were able to talk to our sources and contacts there and find out what are the issues that they have in agreeing to renew it. How is the new AGOA going to look like? And how can Botswana better benefit from that? And then also there was a deal room where...
A deal room, interesting.
Yeah, an entire day with a deal room where deals are being announced between either quasi U.S. government agencies or U.S. government businesses and African companies. And then the key takeaway for me was the fact that we always talk about global competitiveness. We talk about the ease of doing business.
Yes.
When we went to Washington, all those rankings and ratings we talk about here were now on show there in D.C. Because 40 countries are meeting with America. You are literally putting your investment climate and what you've done to facilitate business on show against 40 other countries.
Absolutely.
So when they talk about a deal room, when they talk about bilaterals and they use this kind of words, essentially they're saying, how do you rate and rank against your peers on the continent? How are you able to ensure that when you speak, your voice is louder than somebody else? And this is what we were watching out for. We were watching out for those trends, which is why when Rush was speaking earlier on and he was confirming that the summit, the Botswana is going to host the Corporate Council on Africa Business Summit this year, it was a huge scoop for Botswana.
Wow.
Because it shows that the message that was taken there, the investment climate that was taken there, all the lovely things that we speak about a lot, from logistics to internet connectivity and that kind of thing, it actually rang true, and it actually was felt by the people who had organized the conference, and they felt that they could actually take this entire thing, take Washington, and bring it right back to Gabs.
And that I love the way you articulated yourself in line as a business editor. That goes to show that, you know, in black and white, in objective numbers, because that means Botswana is doing well against its competitors on the continent.
It means that, for me, just watching what was taking place there, it means that Botswana is able to stand shoulder to shoulder.
Okay.
We put it to the minister, by the way, Re Kafela, we put it to him and said, Botswana has been slipping down the ranks of competitiveness over the years. Countries such as Rwanda and, you know, the other big titans of Africa.
Yes.
Are creeping ahead. That doesn't mean that Botswana is regressing or doing badly.
Yes.
It just means that others are outpacing.
Yes.
The speed of the reforms that we have. But those are numbers on a chart. So those are rankings that you have. When you go now and you sit in a room with 40 other countries and businesses from America, you're able to see in real time where the deals are moving or where the interest is going. So it's no longer about just saying Rwanda is above us.
Yes.
You're able to see where are people interested in investing in Africa.
Wow.
Yeah. So those same things that you hear all the time, you know, from economic and political stability, the predictability of the judiciary system, the growing internet connectivity, investments in infrastructure.
Yes.
All those things that are frequently said when you talk about the investment climate. You are now able to hear other people who are not from Botswana speak about them and say, this is why we're interested in going to Botswana. This is why we're interested in investing.
And let me ask you this last question as somebody who understands and went through that experience. What would you say are the opportunities for the Botswana, the entrepreneur, the SMME, from a micro or macro economic opportunity? I mean, for example, we know that government would like to create a robust manufacturing sector. We know that we need to, you know, beef up our exports. What opportunities would you say, just in layman terms, did you see that, you know what, in the right, or were headed in the right direction, and here are the opportunities that will transition into a multiplier effect for the Botswana? Care to just touch on that?
Yeah, I mean, there's plenty. One thing that is a, you might call it a barrier, someone else may call it an opportunity. Is the fact that when it comes to doing business with the US,
yes,
they have these things called sanitary and phytosanitary standards.
Okay.
And they're very high.
Yes.
So you're not just going to be able to, Uli and SME, you're not going to be able to wake up in the morning and say, I'm going to export.
Yeah.
This is why AGOA as a deal has been very underutilized in Botswana. At some point, I think the exports under this agreement for Botswana got down to pretty much nil. So the idea now is to say you capacitate those businesses. And as far as we have been informed, the U.S. Embassy in Botswana has agreed to work with SMEs to capacitate them, so that they better take advantage of AGOA.
Yes.
There's certain sectors that they've been identified as key. For instance, jewelry, arts and crafts. I think there's also leather making. There's also the traditional ones such as textiles. And then you can move into manufacturing. There's 6,000 lines of products between which are covered by AGOA.
6,000.
6,000.
Yes.
And then you have a multiplication of agencies and parastatals in Botswana, which are all have the same mandate and say, we're all about facilitating small businesses. We're all about helping you to export, helping you get your quality and products up, capacitating you. So you have to reach out to those. You have your LEA, you have BITC. I mean, you have so many of them that are all working towards the same thing. And then the U.S. Embassy comes along and says, specifically for AGOA, we're going to work with you to ensure that you utilize this agreement. When it's renewed, utilize it far better than has been taking place.
Wow. With
this summit coming up in June, there's 2,000 people who are going to be coming to Gaborone. Captains of industry from across Africa, from across the U.S. I would say an SME or informal sector needs to prepare now for the opportunities that are just going to come from that summit alone.
Absolutely.
Not just the opportunities that will come because you are making deals at the event.
Yes.
But I mean the opportunities that start with things like logistics. So reach out to BITC, reach out to the Corporate Council on Africa, and find out from them how you can provide vendor services, partner services, whether you're a B&B, whether you're into transport, whether you're into logistics, or whatever other business that you're in, whether an SME or informal sector. You can start now and do your research again. So that by the time the summit comes, if there's databases where people are looking for the services, your name should be on it. That's just for providing those services for the summit. That's what we saw in Washington, where it's a huge deal, like I'm saying. Pulling that kind of a thing off, just from security to the logistics, is almost impossible. A micro kind of summit is going to take place here in Gaborone, but still 2,000 people hosted here is a big deal.
That's a huge deal.
Yeah. So you can have those opportunities just around the summit, and then obviously at the summit as well, you want to be inside that room. You want to hear what people are talking about. You want to meet with your peers, and then work with Bobby ITC, work with Leah, work with CEDA. That's why I say there's a number of agencies that exist to assist the person who's interested in capacitating themselves to reach that level. If you miss that opportunity, it's not going to happen anytime soon again. So it's something that we start researching now, see who's coming from Corporate Council of Africa has the list of the people who are going to come, I'm sure, or they'll have it soon. So you can see which sectors are coming through. Not only from the US but from Africa, and then you can prepare yourself.
Absolutely. I think, man, you could do a news booth together at the summit. I think that would be very interesting, because whether you like it or not, you really, really put it together and articulated it well from both a micro to a macro in order to show the benefit of, this particular summit, what it means for the US Africa Summit, Leaders Summit, what it means for the informal sector, right up to logistics, right up to radio broadcasters, right up to different parts of, including AGOA. I do agree with you in terms of we need to revisit AGOA and really look at it. I also consider, even in the agricultural sector, a lot of our products are purely organic. And we need to now educate the farmer in terms of understanding the end goal and how to better prepare towards getting to the end goal. So thank you so much. Let me give you this opportunity to share your parting statement, my brother. And of course, thank you so much for being a part of the show.
Yeah, no, thank you for having me on the show, and I'm just looking forward to seeing how the summit works out in June. Providing coverage there as well, and we'll be tracking those same trends that we've been saying in terms of competitiveness.
We'll be hosting Naloena. I'm taking you off the writing and bringing you into this compound onto radio, because a lot of people are listening to the show. A lot of Botswana are understanding. I think, in my personal opinion and in my limited knowledge, there's a global awakening to opportunity. What the digital revolution introduced to us is no longer limiting us to say, Onale office, you have to work from Prot 356, phase 2. Now we are understanding that there's opportunity all over the world. And of course, my next guest is going to touch on that and how she's achieved a lot of that from understanding how you can transition into the digital world. And whether we like it or not, we need apps. We need a lot of those digital investments in Botswana. I mean, radio, newspapers have gone online. There's so much opportunity for you and I. Kings and Queens, welcome to the Stars and Stripes show. And of course, we're going to continue the conversation. We're speaking to Rembongeni Nguni, a business editor at Mehe, and of course, about his experience reflecting on the US Africa Leaders Summit. And of course, my next guest, hold on. She goes by the name Kinkanse Shumba. She's the co-founder, veteran broadcaster. She's Gabs FM alumni. She's a news editor. I bumped into her. She didn't see me, but I think she covered a high-profile case that we met at the courts in Botswana, and a lot more. Do not change that. We're going to be talking to her shortly after this about her experience and, of course, what it means to be a part and parcel of this. Kings and Queens, good morning.
Takatukwani. Power to engage your world is on 101.0 FM.
It's Gabs FM, powered to engage. Well, kings and queens, thank you so much for being a part of the Stars and Stripes radio show, proudly brought to you by the U.S. Mission in partnership with Gabs FM. And we're going to cross over into our next segment called Ask the Sharjah. This is where you get to ask the acting ambassador any burning questions that you might have. Her Excellency Amanda Jacobson. And this is what you had to say. Does the embassy engage the civil society or NGOs in rural areas on available funding opportunities? And this is what she had to say.
The answer is yes, yes, yes. The U.S. Mission awards grants and cooperative agreements to nonprofit organizations to achieve our foreign policy priorities in Botswana. And over the years, we've supported community development programs on health, economic empowerment, and community-based natural resource management programs throughout the country. So here are a couple of examples. Through our Ambassador Special Self-Help Fund over the last 2 years, we've funded 10 NGOs throughout the country about $100,000 for programs on special education, supporting education for children in rural areas, vocational training programs, and conservation. Separately, through a competitive process, local organizations can submit proposals for specific funding opportunities with USAID. Currently, they're funding 5 NGOs working in urban and rural areas. These organizations include Tebelopele, Stepping Stones International, Humana People to People, Bocape, and Hope Worldwide Botswana. Local partners, in fact, account for 62% of USAID investments in Botswana. And last, just to highlight, through the U.S. Emergency Plan for AIDS Relief, PEPFAR in Botswana, we're funding a PEPFAR community-led monitoring grants program. So there are 4 NGOs who are working in 12 districts, and we have selected facilities in 8 rural districts for these activities, which include building the capacity of communities, facilities, and districts to ensure the availability, access to, and delivery of quality HIV and related health services, and promoting stigma and discrimination-free services. So just to highlight for organizations out there who are interested in applying for U.S. grants, you should check out our website at bw.usembassy.gov, or you can just go directly to grants with an S, grants.gov.
It's Gabs FM, powered to engage. Well, thank you so much, Your Excellency. Let me do this. Education USA has got an important announcement for you. Notice of graduate session postponement. This previously scheduled graduate information session on Tuesday, January the 24th, 2023 at 3 p.m. has been postponed to Monday, the 30th of January. More information, please feel free to contact Education USA at 3953982. Now, in the building, we're going to have the interview of the evening. Look, I hold this lady in high regard.
Of the evening.
Of the morning. Sorry, you're right. I do an evening show. You do know that, right?
Yeah, I do.
But thank you so much, Kikanse Shumba, for coming through. Look, you've done so well with Argus Online. I mean, whether you like it or not, we mention Argus Online with other media houses. Well done. How was your journey? Just start there. Let's just start there. As in your journey as a radio broadcaster, as a media practitioner, as a journalist, and now you're even doing gigs in Washington, D.C. we hear.
Imagine.
Hey,
a very good, a very good morning to you, and thank you so much for having me, and thank you to the embassy for allowing us to be part of the conversation. Where do I start with my journey?
Please.
My journey started here, and then I got fired from here.
Wow, I should get fired maybe.
And the firing did me well, and I'm very proud of myself for being fired. It did me well.
Wow.
I started my broadcasting journey right here on Gabs FM.
Yes.
Straight from school, I became an intern here. I was producing the morning show. At the time, it was with Reginald and
one
Sepo.
of the biggest morning shows we've had.
It still is the biggest,
Yes.
even up to now. I'm still waiting for anyone to surpass it.
Yeah.
Please, So that's where I started, and then I started doing Breakfast with Reg as well, which is a show that I did on Gabs FM again for a good 5 years of my time here. And then Heavens decided otherwise, that I need to move to other aspects of my life. And I got kicked out, which is honest truth.
Yes.
And then from there, then I moved with two of my friends. We then began the Agas Online from that. So the pain and the heartache and all that comes with it, especially because I was quite pregnant at the time. On my last trimester, then we moved to the Agas Online. We birthed the Agas Online, two of them from print, and I was the only broadcaster in the team. And then we formed the Agas Online, and we're here.
Wow.
6 years later, pound to pound with you guys, with newspapers and so on. So we've been here for over 6 years, and we know we're going to be here for even longer.
Well done. I love to see such a journey, and a journey without challenges wouldn't be a testimony, and we're proud of you and your team. Look, let's talk about the US Africa Summit. Your experience, was it your first time in the US? Oh, serious?
It was literally the first time.
Wow.
To a point where even now I punctuate every other sentence ever since I came back with when I was in America. It's very important so that people remember when I was in America. I was in America.
Let's go.
So we started off here with Mbo. We traveled on a whole 20-hour flight.
Wow.
When the longest I've been was China, which was quite small, and South Africa, Zims, and then you get on a 20-hour flight. It was flipping cold. It was really, really cold. But beautiful reception. We traveled very well. The embassy did us good. Make sure that we were staying was proper, top notch. In fact, just as a side note, and most of the Kenyans were staying there as well. The delegation from Kenya, where the president, Uhuru Kenyatta, came through.
Wow.
And addressed the Kenyans where we were staying. And because some of us already look like Kenyans, Swahili hairline, just wing it there. So that's how we go to America. But I think for me, it was a beautiful experience. As a broadcaster, to see yourself,
absolutely,
and as a female, to be recognized in that sense, and as a media outlet, to be recognized in that aspect, to say you guys can go pound to pound with radio stations, with newspapers that have been established and that have been there for so long, and they want the Agas Online to go and represent them and go do coverage in Washington, D.C. That is a tap on a shoulder.
Absolutely.
You're doing well. So it was a big props for the industry, for us as females, 1. 2, for us as the Agas Online. And 3, just for Giganza Shumba as well.
Yes.
I mean, it means a lot for me when I write in my CV, I've been a participant. I've been there when I was in America, when I ate American food, when I did American things, and when I changed my American accent. But sadly, because I forgot my American accent. But yeah.
Look, and whether we like it or not, I think in the Obama administration, they really use social media as a strategy during campaign. And, it goes to show the power of what Agas Online represents. Yes. You cannot underestimate, the online platforms and their reach. Yes. Talk to me as a broadcaster. What is your takeaway? What were some of the highlights? What can we, Ronabo Swifty, other media houses learn? Because whether we like it or not, June's around the corner.
Absolutely.
We have a national obligation to implement the next summit and ensure that it becomes successful.
I think for me, the biggest thing is, it's always easy when you hear what is the land of the brave.
Yeah.
Those guys are literally brave. You could make a big distinction between these are not Africa and these are the American ones. They go in and they go in hard. And one of my biggest take homes for me this year is that we're not leaving anything behind. I want a lot of Botswana, a lot of young people to go in and go in hard. If it means in the reporting, go in hard. Having conversations right now, this kind of conversation, give it or leave it on the floor.
So even speaking to power,
Yes,
I think the psychology around speaking to power is something that, our listeners and our readers don't understand. It's not an easy thing.
It's not an easy thing, but one of the things that I appreciate with the Americans that they will approach you and tell you to your face. If they need to tell you, they need to ask you the question, they will ask you to your face. They understand who they are and they're understanding their comfort and they're able to confront issues. And I think for me, that was a big thing, a big learning curve that one needs to bring home. When you're going to be dealing with anything, for instance, we have the summit coming into the country in a few months. When that happens, if you're a taxi driver, sort of confidence, and so that you get convincing people to listen to you.
Yes,
so it's about that for me. That was a big thing, but also it felt it's empowering to be sitting around 49 heads of states. You know how in Africa you're literally next to the man. I mean, it was the first time I was less than a meter away from President of Uganda, Yoweri Museveni. That also, it says there's a level of conversation and rapport that is created because there's a level of closeness that they bring to the table for you as a journalist. So you're able to quickly ask a question and they're smiling at you and they're waving and they're having that cordial relation with you. So for me, it was good. And also the way that they did the social media, and we do every other minute. We did a COVID test every day. Your result in the next 15 minutes. An email comes through. It tells you the agenda of the day. When people just finish speaking, they're already sending you that thing. It's the promptness for me.
You're joking. So and that's an amazing thing for a broadcaster because it allows you to share the source of information away. So you are getting
in real time.
In real time?
In real time. I mean,
that's
even
amazing.
for us, the others online.
WhatsApp or circulate or speech animo group
Exactly. But with them, it's about real time. So with immediately when President Biden stepped down, they're already sending you that speech. When President Museveni finished, they're sending you a speech. When President Masisi finished, they're already sending you that speech. Or you already knew what's going on. Everything was detailed and they pay attention to detail, which is good for us as broadcasters.
Yes.
You don't miss anything.
Let me ask you this. The response to the President Masisi's speech, how was it? Just touch on that for a second.
Yeah. I think one of the things that he talks about was that, and I like his candidness.
Yes.
The President is very candid. He said, for the first time, we feel that as Africans and African leaders, we are being heard.
Wow.
We're not talked to. And for me, I think he said, I'm delighted that the U.S. has come to look at us differently. They've come to look at us as successful countries. For me, that was a big thing. It's beyond powerful. It says that the U.S. now looks at Africa pound to pound. And also otherwise. We are seen as players in the industry that are able to bring value to the table.
Absolutely.
And which is exactly what they did. So obviously a lot of times it was more conversations and more talking. But for me, the president's speech, a lot of Botswana would love it in the sense that he spoke about internet connectivity and that there will be internet connectivity across, and that there will be tablets being given by Nabaskolo and computers. And we just saw recently, I think 2-3 days ago, where the Ministry of Basic Education released a statement to the effect that connected laptop to use. So for me, that is a bonus to say, so it wasn't just a talk shop. So they actually implemented that which he spoke about. And he also spoke about the fact that America gives Botswana an element or gives them hope that they can be a land of the brave as well in Botswana, that we're able to export and be able to import good products that will be able to sell internationally. So that was good. One of the things that you would appreciate is that BITC was there.
Yes.
So with BITC being there and going around with the president, it says when they see opportunities of business and collaborations, they're able to easily connect. He talked about ease of doing business.
They're very important.
Which is very, very important. And we met a few people when we were there with Mbo from different countries who were thinking, we want to do business with Botswana. We like Botswana. What are your thoughts on Botswana? Should we go do business with Botswana? And that is good simply because of what the president spoke about in his speech. And that he inspired hope, especially because now we are about health. And when you're talking about health, COVID didn't hit us extra like in other countries.
Yes, absolutely.
You know, that was a bonus that one would take home.
Well, it's Gabs FM, powered to engage your world. And of course, if you've just joined us, you're coming to the tail end of the discussion where we're reflecting on the US-Africa Leaders Summit. And of course, I've got great guests, and we're talking about the importance of understanding our role as Africa. And I like what you said, and I like what you're echoing the words of the president, because previously, a lot of African states felt undermined by the US-Africa relationship. There was, and it is nice to hear that there is a new sort of perspective. Let me ask you this. 2024 is around the corner.
Yes.
Our elections are around the corner.
Yes.
Media plays a huge role in, reporting, accountability. What are some of your takeaways that you took away from this particular summit in line with the 2024 elections, what we should be doing as broadcasters, media houses, etc.?
I think for me, in two ways. One, we need the government to come on board and be able to give us freedom of information, the bill. We need it passed because we're going to need it a lot when it comes to election reporting and just general coverage of what it is that we do.
Yes.
It's important. And two, we need IEC to now start digitalizing everything that they do. We're in the fourth industrial revolution. We need things to be quickly online. Right now, I want to be able to get to the IEC website and get everything that I need to know from 10 years ago about the delimitation, about what have you not. I need to get that done. But also for us as journalists, what I loved about America is the swiftness, like your name.
Yes.
Unintended.
Hello.
Very swift. Baitola. Baitola. You get to a point where I remember we're watching one of the channels there, and Ronaldo up in one of the states. Literally elections, you would see exactly what is happening, which is exactly what you would possibly, which we believe that you will see, and we know that you will see with the Agas online. That's where we're going.
I like that.
The effectiveness and the realness and the real time of reporting issues minute by minute, as and when they unfold.
Fantastic.
That is a beautiful aspect. And also the fact checking there for me was beyond amazing. Before they release anything to you in a statement, they would have done the fact check, which I believe you should also do. Be strong with our fact checks as well, so that when we disseminate our information, we disseminate our information very well and well put. But also for me, I think one of the things that was a take home was that they're like associations that they've created. I'm hoping and I'm believing that at some point before we go to elections, the online somewhat of regulation.
Yes, it's important.
Which ones are more authentic and which ones are not.
I like that.
While when we came on board, it was a beautiful thing. It also has its disadvantages because you can set up a page anytime tomorrow, and then you call yourself a journalist, and people think you're authentic when you've really not been. Yeah.
Unfortunately, we're fast running out of time. Kikanza Shumba, we're proud of you. Shout out to you. Well done to the both of you.
Thank
I
you
really
so much.
enjoyed this particular show. The Southern Stripes Radio Show, proudly brought to you by the U.S. Embassy. I must say happy birthday to Aisha. Shout out to you. Have a fantastic day. Top of the hour, crossing over to the news with Rete Bogomokota. Good morning.
The Stars and Stripes show was brought to you by the U.S. Embassy.